So there I was, sitting in the third row at Stanford's graduation, surrounded by my fellow MBA graduates. And, of course, my family arrived 20 minutes late, like always. My dad, with his usual charm, loudly complained about the ceremony, saying it was a waste of time and he could be watching the game. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there, trying to soak in the moment. The keynote speaker is talking about leadership and innovation, and all I can hear is my dad's critique about everything from the speaker's suit to the speech length. This was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life, but the tension was thick. Dad was already bored, and I hadn't even gotten my diploma yet. When my name was finally called, you could almost hear the collective sigh of relief from my family, like they were waiting for me to get it over with. Madison Hayes, Master of Business Administration, summa cum laude, they said over the microphone. I walked across the stage with my head held high, feeling the weight of the moment. 4 years of nonstop work, building my company, surviving late nights, and endless projects. This was it. I earned it. And as I shook the dean's hand and accepted my diploma, I caught sight of my family in the crowd. My mom was snapping pictures with her phone, looking proud, but my dad, he was sitting there, checking his watch, obviously bored out of his mind. I couldn't believe it. This moment, my moment, and he couldn't even put down his watch for a few seconds to look at his daughter, the one who just graduated at the top of her class. He didn't even seem to care. And the worst part, it was the same old thing, the same pattern of undermining comments. "This is taking forever," he muttered, loud enough for the people around us to hear. I could be watching the game right now. It was like the ceremony was just some sort of inconvenience to him, and I was just a footnote in the bigger picture, as if all my hard work didn't matter. I tried to focus on the keynote speaker, some renowned tech entrepreneur who was talking about innovation and leadership, things that meant something to me. But Dad just kept going. He didn't stop. The speaker's suit, the length of his speech, nothing was safe from Dad's critique. He was practically broadcasting his disappointment in being there. It was like I wasn't even in the room. I was standing on stage, being handed a diploma that represented everything I'd worked for. And yet, all I could hear in the background was my dad's voice, belittling the entire experience. I was so frustrated, but I had to bite my tongue. The last thing I wanted was to make a scene in front of everyone, especially on such a big day. When the ceremony was finally over, I walked back to my family, diploma in hand, a mix of pride and disappointment swirling inside me. I had just graduated from one of the top business schools in the country, but I wasn't sure if I was walking toward a family that would be proud of me or one that would just tear me down. I mean, what was supposed to be the most proud moment of my life felt like a hollow victory. Sure, my mom was happy, taking pictures and congratulating me, but my dad, he looked like he couldn't care less. And sure enough, as soon as I reached them, he didn't even congratulate me. Instead, he gave his usual critique. "Well, that was a waste of 3 hours," he said, loud enough for people around us to hear. He didn't even try to whisper. All that fancy talk about changing the world. You know what changes the world? Hard work and common sense, not sitting in classrooms talking about theories. He just didn't get it. The hours, the years, all the sacrifice, none of it seemed to matter to him. It was just another thing for him to dismiss as theoretical nonsense. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I held it in. I just graduated, after all, and the last thing I wanted was to get into a fight with him right there. But damn, it stung. Every word he said. It just felt like a slap in the face. And it wasn't just about the graduation day. It was always like this. He'd always been dismissive of anything I tried to accomplish. When I got into Stanford, he called me a show-off, said I was putting on airs. When I started my company during my second year, He didn't think it was a real business. "You're just playing with computers," he said. He never understood that I wasn't just getting a degree. I was building something that could change the world. But every time I shared my achievements, all he did was shoot them down. No matter what I did, it was never enough. I could win a gold medal, and he'd find a way to tell me it was just luck. That's what he was like. So, when he turned to me and said, "Yeah, and what's that gonna get you?" "A fancy piece of paper and a pile of student debt." I felt like I was about to lose it. He leaned in closer, like he was about to whisper something important, but his voice was still loud enough for people around us to hear. "Madison, let's be realistic here. You'll never amount to anything. All this education nonsense is just delaying the inevitable." And there it was, the same line he'd been feeding me my whole life, that I'd never be good enough, that no matter how much I achieved, it wouldn't matter. I was never going to make him proud. And honestly, at that moment, I was done trying. I just wanted to walk away. But I couldn't. I didn't even know what to say back to him. How do you respond to someone who's been telling you your whole life that you'll never amount to anything? What could I possibly say to make him understand that I wasn't just wasting my time, that everything I'd done, everything I'd built was real? But even as I stood there, listening to his words, I knew I had to do something. I had to make him understand. I had to show him that I wasn't some kid playing games anymore. I was a grown woman with my own dreams and my own success, and he wasn't going to take that away from me. So there I was, standing with my diploma in hand, trying to keep my composure as I made my way back to my family. I could feel the weight of everything, but at the same time, it felt like the world was just waiting for something to shift. My family was still in their usual state, half proud, half distant. And then, just as I was about to reach them, I heard it, a voice, soft but distinguished, calling out from behind us. "Excuse me, are you talking about Miss Hayes?" I turned around, surprised to see Dr. Richard Sterling, the president of Stanford University, walking toward us with a warm smile on his face. He was flanked by 2 other university officials and, I think, a reporter from the Stanford Alumni magazine. My stomach dropped. I had no idea why Dr. Sterling was coming over, and I sure didn't expect him to make a scene in front of my family. "Yeah," my dad said, suddenly straightening up, his whole posture changing as if he was about to meet someone important. He cleared his throat and put on his talking to important people voice, which, I'll admit, made me want to cringe. "This is my daughter, Madison. We're very proud of her." I stood there, feeling a little bit weird about the sudden shift in my dad's tone. It was like he was trying to impress someone, but for the wrong reasons. He didn't even know what I had accomplished yet, so it all felt a little empty. But Dr. Sterling didn't seem to notice. "As you should be," he said, still smiling. And then he turned to me, his eyes twinkling a little bit like he had some sort of secret to share. "Miss Hayes, I was hoping to catch you before you left. I wanted to personally thank you for your extraordinary generosity to our university." I froze. I hadn't expected that at all. My heart skipped a beat. "What generosity?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dr. Sterling gave me a knowing look, and that's when I started to feel that familiar knot in my stomach. This wasn't good. I had made a donation, yes, but I had specifically asked that it be kept confidential until after graduation. I hadn't told anyone in my family about it yet, and now here I was, stuck with this very public revelation. "Sir," Dr. Sterling said, turning to my dad, "your daughter has just made the largest single donation by an alumnus in Stanford's history, $50 million for our new engineering building." I swear. The color drained from my dad's face in an instant. It was like someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. His mouth dropped open, and for a split second, he just stood there, staring at Dr. Sterling like he couldn't comprehend what was happening. $50 million, he asked, his voice barely audible, as though hearing the number had physically shocked him. $50 million. Doctor, Sterling confirmed, his voice proud and enthusiastic. The Madison Hayes Center for Innovation will be breaking ground this fall. It will house our most advanced computer science and engineering programs, providing state-of-the-art facilities for the next generation of tech leaders. The silence from my family was deafening. My mom dropped her phone. I could hear it hit the ground, but I was too stunned to even look at her. Kevin, my brother, had been scrolling through his phone, barely paying attention to anything. But now, he looked up, eyes wide, mouth hanging open in disbelief. It was like all of a sudden, he realized something had completely changed. Wait, $50 million, Dad repeated, his voice shaky this time. He turned to me, his eyes narrowing in confusion. It was as if he was trying to figure out how on earth I could have that kind of money. I don't understand, he muttered, his voice still a bit lost. He was searching my face for an answer, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of this. To him, I was just the same old Madison, his daughter who still had student loans, who lived in a tiny apartment, who drove a 10-year-old Honda. How could I have $50 million to donate to anything? But how could I possibly have this kind of money? What? What is all this? Mom stammered, still trying to process it. Her hands were shaking, and she looked like she was about to faint right there. You did what? Before I could even say anything, Doctor, Sterling spoke again, almost like he was trying to clear up any confusion. Your daughter is the founder and CEO of Codecraft Solutions. I assume you know about her remarkable success in the tech industry. My dad looked even more confused. I could see his brain trying to process this new information, but it wasn't computing. He looked back at me, his eyes wide. What are you talking about? Actually, I said, speaking more quietly now, feeling the weight of the moment. They don't know about my company. Doctor. Sterling looked surprised for a moment, then his expression softened. He understood. He could see that my family had no idea what I'd been up to all these years. Oh, I see, he said. Well, perhaps this is a conversation for later. Miss Hayes, would you like to schedule a time this week to discuss the building plans and the naming ceremony? That would be perfect, I said, forcing a smile, despite the tension in the air. As Dr. Sterling and his team walked away, leaving us in stunned silence. I stood there with my family, waiting for someone to speak. No one did. My dad was the first to break the silence, his voice shaky but still loud enough for everyone to hear. Madison, what the hell is going on here? I took a deep breath. I knew the moment had come. I had no choice but to tell them the truth. So I sat down next to my mom, still holding my diploma in my hands. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Maybe we should go somewhere private to talk about this, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. No, he snapped. We're talking about it right here. How do you have $50 million to give away? And that's when it all started to unravel. The truth was out, and I wasn't sure how they were going to handle it. The moment Dr. Sterling left, my family just stood there in stunned silence. It was like everything had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. I could see my dad's mind racing, trying to make sense of the words he had just heard. $50 million. He couldn't even wrap his head around it. Mom was still staring at me like she had seen a ghost, her mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. Kevin was scrolling through his phone, still trying to process the information, his fingers typing furiously, probably Googling everything he could find about me. I could see his eyes grow wide, his brows furrowing, as if he was watching the pieces of a puzzle slowly fall into place. Dad, though, he was stuck on one question. But how can you possibly have $50 million? You've been a student, you don't even have a job. He was almost shouting now, his face turning red as he tried to piece together this ridiculous puzzle that had just fallen into his lap. I've been running a company for the past 4 years. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my patience was wearing thin. I started Codecraft Solutions during my second year at Stanford. It's a software company. We create custom solutions for big corporations. Dad looked like I'd just told him I'd discovered a new planet. He shook his head, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. A software company, you mean like a hobby? He asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. No, Dad, not a hobby, I said, struggling to keep my frustration in check. It's a real company. We've grown a lot since I started it. We have offices in 3 cities now, San Francisco, Austin, and Seattle. We employ 43 people, and we work with Fortune 500 companies. I could see Dad's face getting more and more confused. Like the concept of me running a successful company was just too foreign for him to understand. And we make millions of dollars in revenue every year. But how? He wasn't letting up. You were in school. How could you possibly do all that while being a student? I balanced both. Dad, I said, my voice getting a little sharper now. I worked hard. I wasn't just sitting around in lectures all day. I spent a lot of time on the business, building it from the ground up. I could feel the weight of my words sinking in, but I wasn't sure if they were registering. Kevin had stopped typing now, his mouth slightly open, probably wondering how on earth his little sister had built a multi-million-dollar business without him ever knowing. Wait, he said, sounding almost too calm. So you're telling me you've been running a company all along and we never knew about it? That's right, I said, trying to explain, though I wasn't sure if I was making any sense to them. How did we not know? Kevin asked, still in disbelief. I mean, you're a student. You don't have a fancy car or anything. How did you afford to run a company? How did you even start it? You think I need a fancy car to run a business? I shot back, feeling defensive now. I wasn't about to explain my financial choices, not when I was being treated like I'd been living a double life. I don't know, Madison, it just doesn't make sense, Dad interjected, his voice still full of disbelief. You've always been so modest. I mean, you still live in that tiny apartment? I just don't get it. You're telling me you've been making millions of dollars while still living like a student? I live the way I want to. Dad, I said, my frustration bubbling over now. I don't need flashy things. I'd rather invest my money in my business and in causes that matter to me. I don't need a mansion or a fancy car to feel successful. Dad fell silent for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. But he still didn't seem to fully understand. So, you've been running this company, making all this money, and you never thought to tell us. His tone had shifted from disbelief to hurt. Why didn't you tell us? Madison, you're sitting on all this money, and we had no idea. I paused for a moment, feeling the weight of his question settle in my chest. Because, Dad, I said softly, my voice dropping. Whenever I tried to talk about my achievements, all you ever did was tell me I was dreaming too big. You told me I was unrealistic, that I'd never amount to anything. So I stopped sharing. I stopped trying to prove myself to you. Dad's face softened a little, but I could see the confusion still lingering there. I never meant to make you feel that way, he said quietly, almost to himself. But then he added, so, what now? What do we do with all this? I took a deep breath, letting the moment sit with all of us. Now, I just want you to understand that this wasn't about proving anything to you. This is my business, my success. I didn't do this for you or anyone else. I did it for myself. And the $50 million donation I made, that's to give back to the university that gave me the education and connections that made this possible. Kevin was still quiet, but now I could see him processing it all, like his mind was slowly coming to terms with the fact that his sister had been leading a multi-million-dollar business this whole time. It wasn't just a hobby. But why didn't you tell us? Dad asked again, his voice low, this time with a hint of regret. Why keep it a secret? I wasn't keeping a secret, Dad, I said, my voice calming. I was protecting it. I didn't want you to focus on the money. I wanted you to focus on the work. I didn't want you to start treating me differently just because I was successful. I wanted you to see me, not my bank account. I could see the shift in my family's reactions. The confusion was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was awe. I couldn't quite tell. But the silence that had hung between us felt a little less heavy now. They were starting to understand. Finally. There was a long silence after I spoke. And for the first time, it wasn't filled with criticism or disbelief. My dad was staring at his hands, looking like he was carrying the weight of everything he'd said to me over the years. Kevin, too, was quiet now, maybe still processing everything. Mom, on the other hand, had started to tear up, her eyes softening as she looked at me. She reached for my hand, holding it gently, like she was trying to apologize without words. Then, Dad finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Madison, I owe you an apology, he said, and I could hear the hesitation in his words. For everything. For not believing in you, for not supporting your dreams, for telling you that you'd never amount to anything when clearly you've accomplished more than I ever imagined possible. I could feel the lump in my throat, but I couldn't let myself cry. Not yet. Not when everything was still so raw. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? It's okay, Dad, I said. But even I knew that didn't cover it. He had missed so much. He had spent so long telling me I was aiming too high, too big. All I wanted was for him to see me, to be proud of me for more than just what I could accomplish for him. And now, here he was, admitting he was wrong. I didn't build this company to prove you wrong, I said softly, my voice steadying. I built it because I love technology. I love solving problems. The financial success was a bonus. It was never the goal. There was another pause, and then Kevin spoke, his voice more thoughtful now. I didn't get it. I didn't know what you were doing. Madison, you never really talked about it, but I want to hear about it now. I want to know about your company, your projects, your future. I turned to look at him, surprised, but there was something in his eyes now, a change, like he was finally starting to see the full picture. I'd like that, I said, offering a small smile. Mom, still holding my hand, whispered, I'm so proud of you, Madison. I'm so sorry we made you feel like you couldn't share this with us. I didn't realize how much we'd hurt you. And that was when I felt a shift. My family, my dad, who had always told me I couldn't do it, my mom, who had been too scared to believe, was finally seeing me for who I really was. I didn't need their approval to be successful. But hearing them say they were proud of me felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Dad, for the first time in what felt like forever, gave me a real hug. Not the awkward, stiff kind he'd given me when I was younger, but one that felt genuine. He pulled back after a moment, looking at me, his eyes filled with something different. Regret, maybe, but also admiration. I was wrong about everything, he said, quietly. And I'm sorry. You've accomplished something extraordinary. Madison. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes now, but I didn't let them fall. I just nodded, squeezing his shoulder. I know you didn't mean it, Dad, but you've got to understand. This is who I've always been. Ambitious, driven. I can't help that. I've always been this way, even when you didn't believe in me. Mom gave me a soft smile, her tears still there, but now there was a sense of peace behind them. We'll do better, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I want to hear everything about what you've been doing. Madison, I want to be a part of it. For the first time, I didn't feel like the outsider in my own family. They weren't just starting to accept my success, they were starting to celebrate it, and that, I realized, was more than I could have ever hoped for. After that day, everything changed. My family, who had once doubted me at every turn, became my biggest supporters. Dad, who had spent my whole life telling me I was aiming too high, started asking about my work, offering suggestions, and showing genuine interest in the company I'd built. Mom became my cheerleader, telling everyone she met about my accomplishments. And Kevin, well, Kevin was the most surprising of all. He switched his major to computer science and asked if he could intern at Codecraft Solutions during the summer. It felt like everything I had been working for, all the sacrifices I'd made, were finally being recognized. The Madison Hayes Center for Innovation at Stanford opened 18 months later, and my whole family was there at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Dad gave a speech about how proud he was of my accomplishments and how sorry he was for not recognizing my potential sooner. It was a full circle moment for me. The family that had once tried to put me in a box now understood who I really was, and I didn't have to hide anymore. And that's what it all came down to for me, the courage to stop hiding my achievements and start demanding the respect I'd earned. I realized that the best gift I'd ever given myself wasn't the financial success or the recognition, it was the freedom to be unapologetically me. If you've ever felt like you had to hide who you truly are or what you've accomplished, just know it's worth it to stand in your truth. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.